It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
Hello and welcome. He is Gary McNamara. I'm Eric Harley. It's time to get to Thursday. Gary, how are you?
Well, just too busy.
Yeah.
Too much going on.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what I find fascinating? You look at the first couple of days of the Trump administration, and I read somewhere and said, "Isn't he doing too much?" No. You throw everything out there.
Mm-hmm.
You throw everything out there, and you see what you can end up getting. So I think they're extremely targeted. I saw Jonathan Turley yesterday say these executive orders are extremely well prepared. Some of them, for example, birthright citizenship, he's trying to get that to the Supreme Court.
Yep.
So that thing is settled. But they're doing everything and are extremely focused early on. But what I find more interesting, I am happy that the Republicans are moving so quickly in the direction that they're moving in. I think it's a good thing. But I just find, I don't know if it's interesting, but fascinating how the Democrats are just completely clueless. What did I say? Clueless?
Yeah, well.
Clueless. Hang on. Let me have another drink of vodka.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to play this because you and I are just fascinated because inside the Democratic Party, they know what's wrong. They know they're wrong on the issues, but even in speaking between themselves, they can't admit it. And we know it because you and I go back to after the election, even before the election. We go way, way back, maybe May or June, early June, when Roy Teixeira and also Douglas Schoen, both Democratic consultants, said the problem with the party is that they've got to be more MAGA.
Yeah, right.
Which we just had a blast reading. But
and apparently Kamala was listening to them.
Yeah, she was. Yeah, she came out and that's what she did. They're wrong on the issues, and they just can't admit we're wrong on the issues. Listen to this on Morning Joe because you have Obama aide. This is, let me see, former Obama staffers John Lovett, John Favreau, and Tommy Vietor on with Morning Joe. And you sit there and you listen to this and you're like, do they actually believe this? Does it make them feel better? Because this isn't hard to analyze.
No.
As we've said before, I need to use not the stink word, but I need to say the other S word. They suck on the issues.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you're losing.
Mm-hmm.
Because you suck on the issues. On the issues, you're insane. As who said that yesterday? Who's the guy that went that flipped to being a Democrat? We brought it up yesterday. Oh, I can't remember who it was. But he used the word insane.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying, the professor, the professor that we had talked about yesterday, who just said, "Well, okay, I'm done," and it was after last week. Now we were surprised. We said, "That's what put you over the top." That he just thinks that they're insane on the radical transgender movement,
right?
And he was labeled himself as a supporter of the LGBTQ, but men playing women's sports, all this stuff is just, as he said, it's insane. We all know what the problem is with the Democrats. Every Democrat knows what it is. You're insane on the issues. But here we go.
The tech billionaire that we talked about yesterday, Michael Rappaport, one of the top fundraisers for the Democratic Party now is raising money for Trump. If you think about that, it really has been a monumental shift in the last year. It really has.
But here are the former Obama aides talking on Joe Scarborough on a morning.
We want to be a party that can win elections. We have to be a party people would want to attend. And you see a Trump rally, and people are having a good time at that event, and Trump is mixing it up. You talked about how do we take on misinformation. How about somebody a Democrat that's doing 2-hour press conferences, that's going everywhere, that can mix it up with everyone, that can go on Joe Rogan, that seems like a good hang. And
doesn't talk like a press release.
And doesn't
everyone already? Everyone's putting their statements out on social media. Write your own posts. Do some press conferences. Sit and talk to people. Go on podcasts. Don't talk like you're just like reading your pollster's memo. It's crazy.
And like, hey, like I know everybody liked the West Wing, and everybody thinks of speeches as like, Abraham Lincoln's second inaugural. Everybody writes their statements like they're crossing the Delaware. They write them like they're doing their own drafts of the Federalist Papers. It's enough. It's not working. Nobody's listening. Nobody cares what we have to say about anything. Donald, we have lost so much credibility with people, and we haven't gotten ability to break through to people. And so, like, yes, we are frustrated and upset, but some of this we have to, I think when you said, should we look backwards? No, of course not. But I think we need to own the ways in which we are responsible for not being able to successfully communicate the threat Donald Trump poses.
What was said there?
I just heard a bunch of blah, blah, blah.
Blah, 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 yada, 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 blah, 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 blah. Nothing
Donald Trump
was
is
said.
a threat. And ending with Donald Trump is a threat.
Right. I think you've communicated your message. I think you can't go further, as we have found out in the last couple of days. You can't go further than Hitler.
Yeah, that's about. They tried to come up with something worse than Hitler. They made some attempts. At one time they were considering calling him Dick Cheney, but then that didn't work out because now Dick Cheney's on their side. So, they couldn't really come up with anything. They can't, because they won't discuss the issues. The name calling and the lying everybody is done with. It really is like the bratty kid on the block that kind of was friends based on proximity, because he lived there on the block. And then everybody just started ignoring him because all he did was call people names and lie, and then all of a sudden he looks around and everybody's gone. Nobody's paying attention to him. You're going to get some attention at first. You might convince a number of people. In fact, they still are. But they're looking at this now. The analysts are looking at this now going, we don't know what to do. Oh, by the way, Donald Trump is Hitler.
And they're throwing out the same BS as, James Carville did, Schumer did.
Yeah.
Oh, but the problem is we're talking like press releases, and we get into the minutia of the issues here, and we need to talk in a plainer way. I don't know what's plainer than the opposition is Hitler and Hitler adjacent.
Right.
I don't see that as a sophisticated press release. Do you?
No, I mean, again, you're not there. They go out of their way to avoid the issues.
Yeah, I know.
And then when somebody asks them on the issues, they have to lie about it. The border is secure. Inflation is transitory.
Well, there's a reason. And the thing is, these were Obama aides, so they know. Mm-hmm. It's got to be tough. It's got to be tough to be a part of a political party, and you go on and you do interviews as they did there in Morning Joe, and you have to lie. You can't even say, unless they're completely delusional. Okay, let me give you the choice. They're either completely delusional or they're lying, one or the other. I believe more likely they're lying because they've all been in politics for the past couple of decades.
Well, they are lying, and they understand that in order to stay in the group, they have to still throw that out there. Yeah, we need to blah, 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 blah. And the thing we need to blah, blah, blah is to blah, blah, blah. Trump is a threat. That's what you just heard from him.
And we need to talk like regular people. And we need to go on and do 2-hour interviews. You guys can't do 2-hour interviews because you suck on the issues.
We need to sound folksy and whatnot and use phrases like whatnot and whatnot. It's, they did this, remember, right after the 2016 election, the liberal activist media. We probably need to take a trip to the upper Midwest, the flyover country. Hold on a second.
Ew.
And that ended.
Ew.
it ended. It ended about as soon as it got out of their mouth. That entire sentiment was gone because they can't give it up. What else do you have if you don't win on the issues? What else do you have in your arsenal? There's nothing else you can throw at Trump. There's nothing else you can throw at Trump. And the game is now everybody. You've been made. Everybody sees exactly what you are. They know that the next person to run for office that's in the GOP is going to be Hitler. No, this time we really mean it. And nobody's buying it because many on the left that had voted with them have said, even some that have podcasts have said, no, you guys are calling him Hitler, and then you're saying, welcome home. You're calling him Hitler, and then you're applauding him. You're friends with him. Because you never thought he was Hitler.
Well, that's a great point. They're trying to make it sound like, well, we're talking over their heads. We're too complicated. We need to talk more like Jeff Foxworthy, maybe, to them. If you've ever said you need to go to flyover country, you might be a liberal.
Yeah, this is, that's the problem that they've all had from the beginning, is because they really wanted this delusional state. They wanted this thing to be, I really think they got drunk on the whole hope and change thing. I do. I think 2008, the euphoria, but the idea that they were then controlling conversations. And during that same era was the rise of social media. And of course, if we can control the conversation in public, then we can control it in the virtual public, which became social media.
The point I wanted to make was, they talk about, we're too complicated. We're talking over their heads. We need to talk like normal folks, because if we don't talk like normal folks, we're losing credibility. Hey, Trump, you're Hitler. Hey, let's welcome him home.
Yeah.
And
right.
It's like, well, you are talking in plain language.
Yeah, everybody gets it.
People are rejecting your you have no credibility because people know you're lying.
Yeah. I heard a bit from Foxworthy the other day. He was talking about, it's an older bit, he was talking about, it's his Southern accent. With a lot of people, in their minds, he automatically drops 100 IQ points. And he says, well, let's face it, you don't want your surgeon talking like me.
Yes.
What we're going to do is we're going to saw off the top of your head, and we're going to dig around in the brain and see if we can't find that dang old clot. So
that's a great bit from him.
But they, when the media and the activists have been, in the activist media to meld everything together, but the left, the Democratic Party, has been in this delusional state because, and they are lying, they were saying something very different not that long ago. We're old enough to remember. They were saying things, again, we talked about it yesterday briefly. Harry Reid, back in the day, the late Harry Reid, senator from Nevada, and talking, about putting up a barrier. We need to put up a barrier on the border. Well, he's talking about a wall. And it wasn't that long ago. It was somewhere between 2012, 2015, somewhere in there. But those are the things that you look at. Okay, where have they been? Trump has been consistent on almost every issue. I would say probably the big one would be visas, but he talked about why he wants to either expand the visas or allow people in legally just overall. He talked about...
He's much more consistent on that now.
Yeah, he is now. And he has been since that change, really, in 2016. In fact, it was on the debate stage. He actually said, I'm changing. I think Megyn Kelly asked the question on visas. And we've talked about it before. Okay, if there's a change of heart, why? And then what he did every time when he talked about it, including the conversation with Jim Acosta, leading up to the moment that Jim Acosta was thrown out for hogging the microphone, the whole thing was about expanding the economy. We're going to need people to come here because we're going to be creating so many jobs. So we need more people. And he's been consistent on that. Even recently, he's talked about that.
Well, you just brought up something. I'm really scared about our survival now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because you saw the story, Jim Acosta may move to midnight.
Yeah.
On CNN.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. If only they had viewers at midnight.
I think it's over for us.
Yeah. Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if we can compete.
I don't know. We could convince those 20 people to probably listen to our show.
We got a great show ahead, too. 866-90-RED-EYE.
This report is brought to you by Shell Rotella. With advanced synthetic technology, is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance. Starting and charging system-related issues are one of the most common causes of winter breakdowns. So when your batteries talk, it's important you listen. Knowing the warning signs that could indicate your electrical system needs attention can help you avoid getting stuck out in the cold this winter. Have your batteries inspected by a professional technician if you smell any unusual or strong odors coming from the battery box. A pungent odor could indicate chemicals are escaping from a damaged or overcharged battery.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Let's listen to Scott Jennings. You're ready? Because this is a beautiful one. This is over. Well, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to play it, okay?
All right.
Because I don't want to give it away. I burst out laughing when I heard this. Here we go.
I think the overall impact of Elon Musk on the Trump orbit has been really good, and his impact on the country is really good. So I don't know how this is going to turn out. I know these kinds of announcements are important to presidents. These kinds of investments are important to new administrations. But, you know, I would listen to Elon. I mean, he's obviously got some information and some opinions about this, and I don't know how much of this is going to be aired in front of and behind the scenes. But
Elon Musk keeps on overshadowing Donald Trump. I mean, you had in the inauguration that it was the hand gesture, quote unquote, that is the subject of great mystery and debate. Yeah, the subject of great mystery and debate.
Are you talking about? You're not one of these salute truthers, are you?
No.
Salute truther.
Wow.
And by the way, that wasn't, that wasn't Elon Musk trying to overshadow the president. That was the news media lying about something.
Right.
And trying to hype something up.
Right.
Elon Musk had nothing to do with it.
Right.
And they're talking about Elon Musk talking about the AI announcement, about whether there's actually enough investment or whether that's
the capital is actually there, and his source says he has it on good word that it's not there. And then all the other, in fact, players in that equation all came out after that and said, no, we've got our cash and we're in. So and we're going to be able to also leverage even further. We're okay with going into debt even further on this project. So I don't know who's correct. I guess we'll see.
Yeah, nobody can overshadow the momentum of the only way I can put it, the momentum of Bulldog Trump right now.
They're really,
he's just mowing down everything.
Well, I mean, I told you during the break, Marco Rubio's first trip is Panama.
Yeah.
And then he's flying directly to Greenland. No, it is. He is going to Panama. He's not going to Greenland because we're going to take that by force.
You know what impressed me yesterday about Trump? Because when I first read it, I'm like, oh God, here he goes off on Russia.
Mm-hmm.
And World War II and Russia, this and that, and then basically he threatened to economically destroy them if they don't stop the war.
Exactly.
It wasn't basically you guys started the war, end it or we'll destroy you economically. And I went, that was really good. I mean, that's good diplomacy.
Well,
look, we want to be friends. You've got a long history.
You got a choice.
You were there in World War II for us. Now end the war or we'll destroy you economically. I'm like, whoa.
That's it. I mean, and we talked about that in the approach with both, Russia and China. We talked about this in the past. You turn Russia into a pariah, specifically under Putin's leadership. That's going to hurt, and a lot of people are willing to play that game right now.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Download our Red Eye Radio app today. You can listen to our podcast after our show is over. Our podcast is a repeat of our show.
Yeah, and thank you.
You can listen to us whenever you choose. I found yesterday and the day before some of the polling is really, really fascinating. We'll go to the CNN poll on illegal immigration, because even I believe if you look at, I saw, last week, I forgot who did the poll, where 80% wanted anybody who committed a crime out of the country,
right,
and 30% wanted just illegal immigrants gone.
Right, yeah.
And I went, I don't know about that. Here is the CNN poll. Harry Enton talking about it the other day, where it stands right now in the polls.
All right.
Sometimes I like blunt questions because they sort of get at the underlying feelings that people have. So this is about as blunt a question as you can get. Deport all immigrants here illegally. I will note the ABC News poll asked about undocumented immigrants. So we have slightly different questions, but these were all taken within the last month. And there's real uniformity here. That's what I really think you see. You see real uniformity. Deport all immigrants who are here illegally, 55% of the New York Times. Marquette, 64%. CBS News, 57%. ABC News with a slightly different question, 56%. So what you're seeing essentially here is a very clear indication that a majority of Americans, in fact, when they're asked this blunt question, which I believe gets at the underlying feelings, do in fact want to deport all immigrants who are here illegally. There's no arguing with these different numbers because they're all essentially the same across 4 different pollsters.
So when you ask the question, deport all immigrants here illegally, there's no doubt, that's the point he's making.
Yeah.
They're not saying undocumented, where you go, what does that mean?
Right, right.
What's an undocumented? It's like illegally, so you take the ABC News poll out of that, you're talking probably right at 60 or 61% of Americans. And not only that, but the New York Times poll that came out, new poll conducted by the New York Times, found a majority of Americans do not want to allow men who believe they are women to participate in female sports. Here it is. The question was, thinking about transgender female athletes, meaning athletes who were male at birth but who currently identify as female, do you think they should or should not be allowed to compete in women's sports? The survey found 79% of respondents believe that men who identify as females should not be allowed to compete in sports. That's the highest number I've ever seen.
And it's a New York Times survey.
Yep. I've never seen a number that high. 94% of Republicans and those who lean Republican oppose letting men compete against women, as opposed to, now get this now, because Democrats lead over independents. 67% of Democrats and those who lean Democrats are against men participating in women's sports, and 64% of independents and those of other political persuasions. I would like to see what those other political persuasions are. Please list them for me. I want to know what they are. Democrat, Republican.
I'm with the Green Party. No, you're not, because nobody's with the Green Party.
That is and I really wonder, but because, you and I talked about the intimidation that we have seen over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
The intimidation that you and I saw, which is unprecedented in my 42 years of broadcasting and in my over a half century of being, paying attention to what's going on.
Right.
And I've never seen numbers like that before, ever.
No.
I just have never seen numbers like that. I forgot to. I was trying to make a point. It just popped out of my head.
The intimidation.
The intimidation.
Yeah, the
factor
that we talked about
you.
earlier this week. Yeah.
Thank you. I have never seen it as great as it was in the summer of 2020.
Right.
For everybody to get aboard with the lie that police departments were systemically racist to hunt down and kill blacks.
Right.
I have never seen intimidation that great that permeated corporations, and then everything that came after that, everything that followed that, the radical transgender movement and the incredible intimidation and bullying and threatening, the misogyny towards women was just, I'd never have seen anything like that whatsoever. And then DEI throughout all companies, which were basically so many companies were promoting things that are illegal under federal law.
Right.
In their DEI training.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I would look at each other going, is it really just conservative talk radio? And I want to make it clear, because I think it's very important to understand. Look, there are talk radio hosts that call themselves conservatives that we probably disagree with. We're more conservative libertarian. As I said, when I took the libertarian test, 15 years ago, I think I was 75%, something like that. And you were like 85% libertarian. But it was at that point, I don't know anyone in the media except for maybe the Wall Street Journal editorial page, National Review, and conservative talk radio that was standing up to it.
Yeah.
I really don't.
Right.
I don't know any other media that was. Even podcasts weren't.
No.
Even people like Joe Rogan weren't. They are now.
No.
They weren't back then.
Right.
And neither was, Bill Maher,
No.
But the identity politics and the racism and the misogyny of the radical transgender movement and the lies about police officers and police departments nationwide. I mean, I've never seen intimidation that great. And I guess my point is, with Trump winning, has that taken that away where people feel more free, even with pollsters, to say, no, this is ridiculous? Because I have never seen, I don't think I've seen it over 60% where the public has said we're against men playing women's.
People who lean Democrat, 67%.
It's never been that great.
And it's interesting that you say that, because everything, over the last, since Election Day, but especially surrounding inauguration, we talked about the coalition of the tech companies that are up there. Look, I'm convinced Tim Cook from Apple didn't vote for Trump, but he was up there. And the point being, I think it goes exactly with what you're saying, because I think there is some of that with a number of people. Not only people, but corporations feel like, in backing out of the DEI thing and all of this and backing away from the causes, they feel like they have permission to go out and make a profit again. Right? When you couldn't do that unless you were doing it for a cause in the minds of far too many corporate leaders. Unless you're doing it, unless you grab one of the flags and raise it up there at your corporate building.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. ESG seems to be gone.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it is. And, Trump
in
giving paid leave to government workers on the whole, basically on the entire DEI thing at the government level, shut it down. I mean, you're on paid leave for now, but the work stops now. That's the whole thing. I heard a lot of people, well, it shouldn't be paid leave. It's like, you kind of work through that. But
I don't know. They haven't explained it. I'm guessing it's probably because of some type of union contract.
I'm guessing it's a union contract, but you also kind of approach it that way anyway. I mean, you're not going to just say, all right, everybody out, like they do in radio. Here's the thing.
Well, no. We have a contract.
Well, we do. Don't tell Alan, though, because I think something's a brewing. But anyway, oh, hi, Alan. Crap, he listens to the show. But the whole thing with that sentiment or that feeling, it's clearly been lifted for a lot of individuals. The tech billionaire yesterday who talked about,
Pincus.
yeah, and
Pincus.
I can't do this and I can't do that. And I had, my own press secretary was saying this and that, and I don't do this. Nobody wants to hear it. And then he was gone, and then I decided, okay, I'll tweet a little bit. I'll put some posts out there, and sometimes I got over emotional, but and didn't get it right, and but there was feedback, and then all this hate coming at me. Well, where does the hate come from? It's the intimidation by the mob. We've seen this. We've literally seen this.
I think the other thing he was talking about was the hatred he felt, though.
Yeah.
He was talking about the fury he felt, the Democrats, that he finally realized that after all these years,
Sure,
Democrats were telling him lies.
Right.
And he was suckered in.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think he had a lot of hate, even for himself not paying attention, and probably for Democrats, pathologically lying to him.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a point when you look at this polling here. Are people coming around and going, my God, we've been all they.
I was talking about it earlier this week.
Was Biden and Karine Jean-Pierre and the Democrats so bad? Then they continue with the Hitler stuff where people go, stop it. Just stop it. Be serious about doing something to move the country forward. Stop lying to us about everything, because now they're giving Trump the benefit of the doubt. If you've seen the movement from 2016 of young people to young people now for Trump, it's mind-boggling.
Well,
how it's changed.
It's something, and I'm talking about it earlier this week, and I brought up the man on the street kind of approach that happened. In fact, where the one guy was asking people on the street on college campuses, well, what do you think? Can I be a 9 foot tall? If I identify as a 9 foot tall Asian man, could I be that? And they were like, well, that hesitation is there because of the mob, because the mob is intimidating at every turn. They don't want to say, dude, you're ridiculous. They don't want to say, that's stupid, because it is. They don't want to say the obvious because they feel intimidated. And over, they're just going along to get along. And what they realized is it's coming for me. What we've said, the left has carved out this, we're going to find a new victim, and we're going to be the champion for that new victim every day, creating more and more subgroups, which by default creates more and more oppressors every day, which means you're part of this group tomorrow or today. Tomorrow, you're the oppressor of the new group. And that's a fact. And we have seen it across the board. You're going to be the one they're coming after next.
Speaking of tall, did you see the new meme with Trump walking into Capitol Hill? Now all you see is Barron's shoe. You don't even get up to the knee. He's now like 60, 70 feet tall.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah.
Oh,
I told you I watched this. Somebody on YouTube put together this, this kind of it was Trump as Thor, but also kind of a Viking-esque kind of vibe to it with AI. And it's really cool, actually. And it's the taking of Greenland. And then it has the evil people are George Soros, he's like the evil old man, in his lair. And then you've got Anthony Blinken, and he's Loki, so he's got the horns coming out of his head, And then there's this huge creature, this evil creature that stands about 80 feet tall, and the head is Hillary Clinton. And it's like, and I thought they missed a great opportunity to have Trump bring Barron, and be the giant. I talked about, I've only seen probably 2 minutes total of Game of Thrones, but the one scene that I saw was this huge battle scene, and one of the guys has a giant with him to help him fight. And I'm like, Trump has Barron and maybe Fetterman. We don't know yet. But, it's just this whole thing, I think, really is, we're getting to the point of the intimidation being lifted, because people, I do believe, because of the results, whether they voted that way or not, the results of the election tell them, you know what, it's okay to reject what they're doing.
866-90 Red Eye.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Who was it yesterday that, Eric, that, by the way, he's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara, blah, 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 all the introduction stuff. We're in the middle of talking about crap. I'm trying to think here. Who was it yesterday? My short-term memory's going, and I'm sober. But who was it who said yesterday that there are people out there looking at Trump and looking at the Democrats and saying this isn't about politics, this is about moving the country forward. The point that I want to make coming up following the top of the hour on that.
Yeah, and we'll get to who that was coming up.
Top of the hour news is brought to you by House Products. Visit houseproducts.com.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and around the planet, we are Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Hi.
Hello.
We talk about all the issues, and then I heard the deep voice guy saying popular culture. All right, so look at my shirt then.
What do you got there?
We can talk popular culture for just a second here.
Yeah, what are you wearing?
My one more before I die sweatshirt.
Yeah.
Or just one before I die, not one more.
Okay.
One before I die.
Yeah.
And that relates to the football playoffs this coming weekend. Just one. The thing is, then I'm almost done completely with all sports. But if they can win it, then I'm done. Then I don't have to worry about it anymore. Yeah. I never have to worry about sports again, except for maybe my golf game. If the Bills are able to take it.
Right.
You know.
Well, and they take on the Chiefs. Right.
Yep.
Yeah. Someone said coming into this game, in fact, I was at a place yesterday and they had ESPN on. It's a sports-themed haircutting place. And they had ESPN on. And they made the point that Patrick Mahomes was 21-1 coming into this game this week with the Bills. So you're saying there's a chance.
He's not 21-1 against the Bills?
Not against the Bills.
Oh, okay.
Overall. So.
You mean over the last year and a half or?
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But it's a fairly steep hill.
And who's the one?
Kansas City.
Who's the loss?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. They didn't say.
To Buffalo.
Is it?
Yeah.
Did they win?
Yeah, the Bills beat them already this year.
Why didn't they make that point? That would have been the big point if they're playing Buffalo this week, right?
Yes, Buffalo's the one.
I think they didn't. In fact, they didn't focus on Buffalo. It was just coming into the championship game. They didn't focus on Buffalo, which you would expect. But yeah,
because I think they're 16-2 right now. Now, but they're saying it because the other game that they lost again, they didn't play any of their starters,
right?
Because they already had everything. They had the number one seed locked up. But for me, see, I'm an old American Football League guy. And Kansas City Dallas was one of the original franchises of the NFL. And then they moved when the AFL was in Dallas. Was it the Dallas Texans? I believe is what they were called. Yeah. They played at the Cotton Bowl. And then the Cowboys came in, and Lamar Hunt just figured, I can't compete against the NFL, so he moved the franchise to Kansas City. So when we were growing up, I'm an AFL fan, the old AFL teams, Buffalo, Buffalo, Kansas City, New England. I mean, they were the Boston Patriots, back then, Oakland, San Diego. I think they started as the LA Chargers, so I think they went from LA to San Diego. I can't remember.
Right.
And the history is really interesting, of the American Football League. And if I was a kid at the time, so we were when the New York Jets won the first Super Bowl, we were ecstatic.
Yeah.
Even though we weren't Jets fans, we loved the fact that the American Football League beat the NFL. That's long gone now. Because the AFC is remnants of the old AFL, but they have NFL. They have teams that were in the NFL back then that went to the AFC, but can't. People say, "Oh, you don't know anything about Kansas City." 64 toss power trap. 64 toss power trap. 64 toss power trap. Hank Stram. I met Hank Stram. He used to do the HBO show, the NFL show, with Len Dawson. I met both of them. Was he doing with Len Dawson? Yeah. You ever see the photos coming out now? Because Len Dawson played for Kansas City when they won the second Super Bowl in a row for the AFL.
Right.
And there's the picture. Oh, no, I'm sorry. There's the picture of the first Super Bowl where Kansas City lost. Because, see, the thing is, the Bills played Kansas City back in 1960. The Bills had won the 64 American Football League championship and the 65. The Super Bowl came in 66. Buffalo played Kansas City in 1966, and Kansas City destroyed them in 66 and went on then to lose to the Green Bay Packers. And there's the picture of Len Dawson, the quarterback for Kansas City, at halftime, smoking a cigarette. Smoking it, but he's smoking it like this. It almost looks like it's not a cigarette.
Right.
He's smoking it like you'd smoke a joint. And there's Fresca there, and it's like, definitely this is old school because he's smoking a cigarette in the locker room at halftime. But then they came and they won the second Super Bowl, and we were as happy as could be. But, one of the greatest games still ever was a Christmas Day game that Kansas City lost to Miami, where Ed Podolak had one of the most unbelievable games ever. So I want the Bills to win, of course, but I've always been an AFL fan. And, Kansas City, you look at Buffalo and Kansas City, and those are, I'm trying to think. New England, okay, Boston is still there. Trying to think. Oakland is now Vegas, right? Gosh.
Yeah.
Moved all over the place.
Yeah.
But, it'll be interesting to see, what happens in that game. And I have no idea. People ask me constantly, what's your prediction? I have no idea. That's why they play the game. I don't know who's going to win.
Right.
No idea. I'm not one of those people. Even though I'm becoming one of them, I'm being sarcastic on social media. Because someone asked me again last week on social media, what do you think the score is going to be? And everybody was putting down their scores. So for last week, I put that Buffalo would win, would beat Baltimore 700 to -14.
Right. They'll get points taken away because, like on Jeopardy, if they do a play wrong, they'll actually deduct points.
And so this week, I haven't been asked yet, but when I get asked on social media, I'm going to say, all right, okay, I was a little bit off on my score last weekend, so I'm going to put this week the Bills 600 and Kansas City -7, just to make the stupid point of let's stop doing this because they scream at each other on these sports shows. And it's just like they have no clue. It's going to be 24-21. No, it's going to be 27-26. No, it's going to be 32-17. No, it's going to... Shut up!
Well, here's what I know. In fact, after watching that for, 20 minutes, and it was mostly blah, 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 and what they need to blah, blah. Here's what I know. in my comprehensive analysis, and I really focused on the Bills, and I did this for you, that I found that in 100% of this, and this is the key, in 100% of the games where the Bills scored more than their opponent, they won. 100% of the time where they scored more points than their opponent, they won.
Really?
Yeah. So that's going to have to be the focus. Scoring more points than their opponent.
So did you do a lot of research for that?
Mm-hmm.
Like over a period of years?
My calculator.
Maybe?
Yeah.
Your calculator.
Every time it came up, yep. Well, what if they score 100 but the other team scores 99? They still win. So that has to be the focus.
Well, that was, because you heard that last week with Baltimore. Well, Baltimore had more yards this, and they had more yards this, and they actually played better. And it's like, Buffalo didn't turn over the ball, and that's part of football. So they won the game because they scored more points than the other opposition. It's like,
well, because I'm sitting there, and it's like we've talked about it for a long time now, but it's, the analysis is because they have 24 hours to fill.
They do, yeah.
They have dozens of people watching now on cable, and so. And so I look at it and I just say to myself, well, I mean, I don't know. The most interesting thing to me that I found is Mahomes turns 30 this year. He's from Texas. He's born in Tyler.
Yeah.
Played for Texas Tech and that whole thing. But then it was like, oh, wow, he's going to turn 30 this year. It's like, you kind of think of him because he looks like he's still 24 years old.
Well,
I know it's only a 6-year difference, but in the NFL, and then the difference would be as a quarterback, you get a little more time than some of those guys who, play other positions. But
if I was doing a sports show, here's a question I'd have. How come the people that played in the NFL when I was young look like they were in their 40s and 50s. And the men now playing football today look like they're teenagers to me.
No, Mahomes, again, looks like he's still in college.
I know.
If he takes his helmet off, it's like, dude, do your parents know you're here?
It's like, you go back, you think Ray Nitschke, and you think of those guys. It's like, they're, Dick Butkus.
Well,
it's like, wow.
Roger Staubach.
These guys were old. These guys were men. They were mature men. They got now. But the whole point is there's a little bit of exaggeration because the modern football player today is much more athletic than the NFL players back then.
But also, everybody looked older back then.
They did, yes. What is it?
I don't know. The Big Bopper was like, 29 when he passed away? He wasn't even 30.
I know.
But he looked like a guy who was around 50, because everybody did.
Now, you just mentioned that.
Vagoda looked 90 his entire life.
You mentioned that because one of the shows I watch on YouTube, and I don't know why. I'm not a fatalist at all. You ever watch Scott on Tape?
I don't think so.
It's the guy from Canada who goes and shows where famous people are buried. But it's fascinating because he does. It's a history lesson.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You learn something along the way. Right?
Yeah, you learn something along the way.
It's not just looking at a headstone. You're kind of learning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he did the entire plane crash of So it was just on it was on last week, and so the Big Bopper, on his gravestone is his picture, and I thought this when you just said that I went, yeah, 29. The guy looks like he's 50.
Yeah,
he looks like a businessman.
Well, Roger Staubach, to bring it back to the NFL, he looked retired, but it's like hey, could you put a uniform on and play one more game every day? It's like everybody looked older back then.
They did. They all.
Everybody looked older. It was just the way people dressed.
So funny you brought up the Big Bopper because I just happened to see his gravestone.
Yeah.
His picture's on it. It's just like,
right.
Jeez.
Yeah.
So he was touring and playing for the teens when he was 55?
Right.
No, he was 29.
Really?
Right.
George Burns, the comedian, was only 40 when he passed. Just turned 40. That's probably not true.
All right.
Yeah.
There it is. We talked our pop culture stuff.
Exactly. Exactly.
Can't believe you brought up the Big Bopper.
I know. And football.
Hello, babe.
And football in the same
And
segment.
football. Now I would have been a football player. Here comes the Big Bopper.
Yeah.
Or I would expect the Big Bopper to be in the movie The Natural with Robert Redford, the baseball movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here's the
Right.
Big Bopper up to bat.
Right.
866-90 Red Eye.
Brought to you by FPPF, Fuel Power Max.
Owner-operators with authority generally have two options when it comes to sourcing freight. Brokers on the spot market or directly from the source, the shipper. As any trucker with relatively recent experience with spot freight knows, the highs of working the load boards can be really high. On the other side of that coin, however, when the market flips in favor of shippers, it can be tough to keep your business afloat working with brokers. The smallest carriers with direct customers, however, can hang on through tough times or even prosper, as long as demand for their customers' product remains at least somewhat stable. Owner-operators in it for the long haul make direct business with customers a principal goal. Owner-Operator Business 101 is provided by Overdrive's Partners in Business program. Go to overdriveonline.com to the Partners in Business section of the website for more detail on this and many other topics.
Brought to you by Shell Rotella, with advanced synthetic technology is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90 Red Eye on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. All right, coming up following the bottom of the hour, we had talked about it a little bit last hour, but didn't get into the specifics of it. Why what's going on now is beyond normal politics. We'll get to that. But first, I saw this yesterday. Representative Thomas Massey has introduced a bill to exempt senior citizens from taxes on Social Security retirement payments.
There we go.
know that Trump had promoted no tax on tips,
Right.
no tax on overtime,
Right.
and it started in 82 when they started taxing Social Security.
Right.
And that, number one, is the number one thing. That is why I am now that has been introduced, I'm completely pleased with the Trump administration.
Right. It has nothing to do with your personal situation.
Nothing to do with the fact that I will be collecting Social Security as of October.
Nothing at all.
As of late September. And
Yeah.
But I have to make sure, because every time I say that, people say, "You're retiring?" No. I reach maximum Social Security. I have to collect it.
Right. They're going to show up and dump tens and tens of dollars on your lawn every month.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I have to. I have to. I'm not retiring. I want to make that clear.
No.
Every time I bring up, he's going to collect Social Security, you're retiring? I'm not retiring. I have no choice but to collect. Darn it. And so it would be a perfect time to have that happen on October 1st, where there's no taxes.
Look,
on
Social
Security.
You're just going to get behind the costs. It has nothing to do with that.
Now, you weren't here last week, one day.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a day that I saw this in thehill.com.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just going to read it to get your reaction.
All right.
Senate GOP rejects House conservative pitch on corporate tax rates. House conservative proposals to raise the corporate taxes to offset the cost of President-elect Trump's tax package are going over like lead balloons in the Senate, where Republicans are warning their House counterparts to back off. The Senate GOP argues that hiking corporate taxes could dampen economic activity, lead to foreign takeovers of U.S. corporations, and result in job loss. Absolutely not, said Senator Mark Wayne Mullen, said of the proposals to raise the corporate tax rates. We were trying to be competitive on the world stage when we dropped it to 21%. To raise it is not the way to get the economy going. Some conservatives, notably Representative Chip Roy, have floated the idea of raising corporate taxes by a few percentage points to ensure that the budget reconciliation package Congress plans to pass later this year does not add to the deficit.
Well, the problem is, Chip Roy, is that when you raise taxes, go back to Charlie Gibson in the 2008 debate asking Barack Obama and making the point in the questioning, you say you want to raise taxes, but the problem is there is a history that when you raise those taxes, revenue drops. And then Obama said, well, Charlie, we're going to do it out of a sense of fairness. So if you're only doing this move for show, number one, I still don't get that, but it would only be for show because it's not going to raise revenue.
On the Laffer curve, if you cut a ton of taxes, it does reduce revenue. Now, we're not at that point because taxes are so high, but even because this comes from the Laffer curve. On the Laffer curve, you can't, for example.
Well, I mean, if you cut taxes to zero, it would probably
If you cut
revenue would probably go away. Yeah,
right. Or if you cut it 90%, I mean, what is that exact point? Would be the question, and that's from the Laffer curve.
Right, but historically, when you go to raise taxes, what happens? You
get
to
less revenue.
Have less revenue.
Right.
It doesn't work that way, Chip Roy.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Yeah, so interesting when I read that article last week, and it said, House conservatives talk about raising the corporate tax. But the interesting thing is, when you actually look at the Laffer curve, the reason it's so complicated, we know, for example, on different taxes have a different effect on the economy. For example, we know you have an indication that you have reached the level of a maximum tax base when you go back to Obama answering that question from ABC News about, well, wait a minute, when they raised the capital gains tax rate, revenue went down. That's how you know at that point that it's affecting investment.
Yep,
it's affecting private sector investment at that particular, at that particular point. So when it gets too high after you see the result of it. But there's so many taxes that the federal government has that have different effects on the economy that it's hard to figure out. Okay, what exactly is that point? But we know that point is reached because taxes are higher than ever before, as we know. The multiple different taxes that exist out there for everything. And so we know that at that point, when they raise capital gains tax, and again, capital gains, it probably is more sensitive when it comes to investment than other taxes out there. But you knew at that point, overall, the tax rate was too high.
Yeah.
And then you have it where if you raise taxes, you'll still get money in. You're approaching that point when you raise taxes, and the estimation is, okay, under normal circumstances, you'd raise this, and you only get half of that amount. You may still increase, but you're not getting the amount you thought, and that's when it starts having that negative effect on the economy.
And it depends on, again, the effect on industry overall. I mean, each company has to reassess, like with the tariffs. The Procter & Gamble CFO yesterday was talking, Newsmax had this story, talking about what's going to happen with basically dish soap, laundry soap, and everything else that Procter & Gamble makes based on the tariffs, and said, well, basically we try and increase productivity to ramp up the efficiency in order to maintain the competitive edge on the shelf, and beyond that, prices have to change. So prices would go up. The same thing happens when corporate taxes and anything else comes along with the government. There's going to be adjustment. It is a period of time, and it depends on the company based on their ability to create greater efficiencies. But ultimately, they pass that on to the consumer, and we know this. And again, that's a liberal approach. Let's raise the corporate taxes. Well, the fact of the matter is that, and I know Chip Roy's concern about all right, you've got all this here, you got all this that, we were supposed to be in the mode of if you're going to add something, you have to take something else away to pay for it. You have to cut something else. Well, let's get back in that mode because this idea of raising corporate taxes or raising any taxes, again, is the liberal approach because the long-term effect is because you would get, if you had a handful of Republicans that were on board in the House, again, the Senate's pushing back on it, but if you had the numbers, a handful of Republicans is all it would take because liberals would love to raise taxes, corporate taxes especially. And this is something they've talked about. Remember, after lowering it to 21%, they came back and said, no, it needs to go back to 25. And that was, in fact, then Speaker Nancy Pelosi talking about that. And we said, that's interesting. They didn't say it needs to go to 30. They didn't say it needs to go to 35. They said 25. But the point being from the liberals, any increase is good because if they get enough of the GOP on board to move in that direction, they know further down the road they can keep moving in that direction. And that's the long-term effect.
Right, which you don't want.
Nope.
I will say this, though. It seems like the administration probably is having a lot of discussion on tariffs and how, what, why, because, we mentioned it. I saw it yesterday again where Trump came out and they said, well, you're going to put tariffs on them because of trade, Russia and Mexico? He goes, no, because of the fentanyl. It's like, well, we thought it was unfair trade practices.
Right.
What is it? Or if you do this, is it to get rid of, are you admitting that USMCA has failed? No, I'm doing this just for fentanyl and for people crossing the border. I'm like, okay. And then what did he say? Oh, about the whole thing yesterday about
Russia.
Well, about China, about TikTok. Well, we might not put the tariffs on China, if we can get a deal done on TikTok. And it's like, well, that's not what you said 6 months ago, a year ago, or a year and a half ago. And I think, the discussion's going on. Okay, we can use, and this is where they have to be careful because countries are watching. If you're using tariffs as just a bargaining position and you're waffling or you're all over the place on it,
you're showing your cards.
You're showing your cards at that point where, I forgot who it was in Canada yesterday, said, you put tariffs on us, remember, you import 60% of your oil from Canada, we'll stop it.
Right.
And then the big threat from Canada, we won't take any of your alcohol. I saw that.
Which has a lot of Canadians concerned.
Yes, but it was like, when I saw that, I burst out laughing. It was like, well, they said, the vast majority of what Canadians drink come from the United States. So you watch it, Canada. You better watch it.
Right.
We're going to cut you off.
This could be sobering in more ways than one.
So yeah, it's what you deal with in economics where, because we were watching during the campaign when they were talking about tariffs and said, well, it didn't cause inflation. Well, it didn't cause out of control inflation, the steel tariffs, but you have to look at when you raise prices overall, what happens. Wall Street Journal editorial page lined it all out, the number of jobs that were lost, because when you protect one industry through tariffs, that means American companies pay more for that particular product, and they end up laying off. We saw it. How do we know? Because it's been tried before.
Well,
we saw it during Bush,
right,
with the steel tariffs, and they had to take them off because they were losing more jobs than they were saving.
The P&G CFO Andre Schulten talking yesterday. This is from Newsmax.com, and here's the quote. What we can't offset with productivity, which would include layoffs, it might result. He didn't say layoffs. I'm throwing that in. It might result in incremental pricing. We've talked about this over and over again. When you raise the cost of doing business, when the government does it and raises the cost of doing business, well, they have to adjust. They raise, the prices to the point the market will bear. They lay off. They increase productivity. Efficiency is what they call it, downsizing, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, but it quite often results in fewer jobs. And those are the things you don't want to happen because there is that adjustment period. The great thing about competition is these companies still have to maintain that competitive edge on the shelf in the marketplace. But there are only so many ways you can do that before you raise prices. And, of course, we saw that with inflation. I did notice, this is interesting, some of the chip makers, the whole, well, this is air. Look, they're overcharging, at the blah, 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 blah. And by the way, that complaint's been there since, I don't know, at least the 70s. I remember that as a kid. Ah, look at all the air in that bag. They didn't. I noticed that I bought a bag it was a bag of chips, and it said the same thing, the party size, but the container was actually smaller. There was less air in it. There were chips that were higher up in that package. And I thought to myself, that's the pushback, right? When people said, well, you're putting too much air and they're charging more for it and blah, 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 blah. Shrinkflation, that whole thing. And now they're filling it, but the container's actually smaller, which, by the way, gives them more units on the shelf and actually makes them, as a company, more productive.
When you
people
said
are still buying it.
I thought you were talking computer chips for the first 10 seconds. I went,
No.
oh, no, he's talking potato chips.
Yeah.
I wonder whether there's more of a discussion going on because Trump has surrounded himself with so many CEOs.
Yeah.
On the whole tariff thing. Because when he said that on TikTok yesterday, I said, excuse me, because the targeted tariffs on China is we're not tariff people, but targeted tariffs on China we believe may be necessary because we know they are involved in unfair trade practices at that point. But still, if you do it, what we said, look, if you're going to do it, be honest about it.
Yeah.
Because when you increase the cost, it always has an effect. It may not cause out of control inflation. It may cause layoffs and moderate inflation. The inflation still might be under 2% or 3% or whatever, but it does. But I just wondered whether they're moderating on that. And the other thing that we talked about before, because when Trump was talking tariffs last time, they talked about how that would hurt the economy in Texas because of the manufacturing of goods crosses the border. And remember that, I don't know what it is now, but this goes back, 6-7 years ago, things crossed the border 6 or 7 times. So it may be assembled, the final assembly may be in Mexico, but parts are going back and forth. Part of it in Mexico, then to the United States, then back to Mexico, then back to the United States, then back to Mexico where it's assembled. Remember the iPhone, when they did the thing on the iPhone.
And Tim Cook was at the inauguration standing right up there with all the other tech guys.
Remember one of the iPhones where they looked and they said, it's made in China. They go, well, it's assembled in China. And there were like 400 manufacturers of parts for the iPhone worldwide, including 68 in the United States.
Right.
And so if you put a tariff on that iPhone coming in, you've just punished 68 companies inside the United States.
Right. And it's not as simple as, well, they need to move it here. You got to have the workforce, which, by the way, Trump knows.
Yeah, that's why, and the public does, by the way, the public, including a ton of Trump supporters, don't agree with him on that. When Trump says we need a lot more legal immigration, and we've gone through, and I'm telling you, when we brought it up a couple of times, I got some of the worst hate mail. I said, guys, I'm just telling you what has happened over the last 80 years. To have 2.5% to 3% growth, you needed a massive influx of labor.
Yep.
Women coming into the workforce and a baby boom that we'll never see before.
Right.
Trump understands that.
Yep. He knows that.
And that's why he said, I'm for legal immigration. We're going to need it. It's, and that's the other thing too. But the other side is saying, no, AI is going to destroy all jobs. Well, we've been told that since the middle 1800s.
Right. Yeah.
That all the jobs are going away. And they've never gone away. We've produced more and more and more and more and more.
Right.
And now I'm reading more articles from these so-called futurist engineers that say, no, AI isn't going to take away. It's going to create a ton more jobs, but we're going to need a more highly educated workforce to do it. And if you don't have that, that's when the H-1B visas come in.
Right.
But are we at that point now? Many people would say no.
Right. Yeah.
And we might not be at that point now. I don't know. I'm not inside every company knowing what their needs are. But if they can't get it here, they may stay here but hire people to work remote from India.
Right. Yeah. We've seen this. In fact, remember, speaking of India, the Namaste Trump rally. Remember that whole thing?
Yeah.
Well, that was based on, hey, we want to shut China out and not do so much over there. And we want to shift that to India. And India's like, oh, yeah, we'll take it. Well, it means, again, this is what's going to happen. Trump knows all these things. And so we'll see where it goes on tariffs and what's going to happen. On the corporate tax thing, sorry, Chip Roy, that's a loser all day.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome, and good morning. Did you see Amazon closing in Quebec?
Yeah.
They've closed. They're going to close all of their warehouses. They went union in Quebec in May.
Well,
so they're going to use all third-party delivery.
Right.
And so you look at, when we're talking about tax policy, the economy,
yep.
tariffs, whatever you talk about,
right?
Pricing right now, because of the inflation we have seen, is so incredibly sensitive.
And in Canada right now, with their cost of living,
yep,
they're going through the same thing, even worse, based on, their economy. It's not a winner. You impose these things, whether it's unions or anything else, and it increases the cost of business. Business will have to change.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Welcome. All right. I think it was Michael Schellenberger who said it's more than just politics now. It's about the feeling that the Republicans and Trump want to do something. That they want to make that, and I think that's correct. In most people are not like us or even our listeners who pay attention every day to politics. They're just not.
Right.
And you've seen it. I mean, in order for Trump to win, you needed a movement of roughly 10 to 15 million people.
Mm-hmm.
And they call them independents. But it's really amazing when you talk to people. One of the things we always get is there cannot be, because we say the same thing, there cannot be somebody who is undecided. How can't you decide between Trump and Kamala Harris, and it's 3 days from the election? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And everybody goes, there's no way you didn't make a decision a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, there are some people. And what I see, because I've seen this more, just in the last week, that, well, no, I'm rooting for Trump because this isn't about politics for me. It's what's best for the country, which, by the way, is politics. But if it makes you feel better to say it's not politics, that's okay. But when you look at it, I think that one thing that the American public has seen And that's why we mentioned the poll numbers just have skyrocketed on some of these issues.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the radical transgender movement has never had such high negative numbers. Never.
Yeah.
As we saw the New York Times polling, 79% of Americans, including 67% of Democrats, believe men have no business playing in women's sports.
Mm-hmm.
That's the highest number ever. I've never seen a poll number that high. But I do think that people look at what Trump is doing, and they may not get into the minutia, but there's no way that you can be somebody who has any type of rational common sense that you look at the Democrats and you say, my God, they wanted an open border. My God, look at the inflation that we see now. Wow. They don't seem to care. Biden turns around. He won't answer questions. Nobody answers questions. Look, obviously they're lying. Wow, look at the anti-Semitism here. What about the misogyny of the radical transgender movement? The identity politics. Stop treating us. Stop trying to divide us. And you look at Trump and you say, this is a guy that really is trying to make the country better. The other people, I don't know what the hell they're doing. And I really think that and I understand when they say that's beyond politics, because these aren't people that are inside the Beltway, talking about the issues every single day. They're just sort of sitting back doing their thing and looking at it going, the guy isn't that bad. When you see how the young people have changed on Trump, that's amazing.
Well, yeah, and I think a lot of that comes from this whole, Hitler, raising the alarm. Young people have a tendency to go, oh, really? Is he really Hitler? I mean, it's the deadpan look on my oldest grandchildren's face when I talk to them. It's like, blah, 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 blah. And they go, mm-hmm. And I'm expecting, really? And, they don't react that way. So when people are screaming, crying wolf, like the left has been doing for the long, crying Hitler.
Wow, that's the new crying wolf.
That's
crying
the new
Hitler.
crying wolf is
Hitler!
crying Hitler.
You're Hitler.
Yeah. And when they've been doing it for so long, but then it comes around, and then you have podcasters that don't support Trump, and they'll come out and go, "Well, you guys are calling him Hitler, but you invite him over here. You're okay with this, and a couple of senators actually, Democrats, actually ran their campaign in the last few months." Changed to, we stood with Trump on, and so how can he be Hitler? These are the things, and AOC is still going at it. But this is the problem. They're really down to a handful of these radicals over and over again. Now, some of them who are saying some of the right things are still in the mob may come to get me if I don't say the right things by the end mode. We played some audio earlier. Look, what we need to do as a party is blah, 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 because people fear Trump. You got to toss out that bone to the radicals to make sure they're not going to be at your doorstep taking the entire kill. This is their biggest issue right now. They believe they still have to appease the radicals. I don't believe all of them believe this. I think if you were to sit down with them behind closed doors and they felt they could speak freely without the radicals knowing about it, I think many of them would go, yeah, it's gotten bat soup crazy.
Well, but they do know it, and they do know it because you have, and we mentioned before, Roy Teixeira from the Liberal Patriot, Douglas Schoen, who is the Democrat operative and pollster, and they've said it, that they're wrong on the issues.
Yeah.
They're nuts on the issues. People look at them where they stand on the issues. Think about this. They're out there still promoting that. Think about the professor that we talked about yesterday, lifelong Democrat, gay activist, sits there and says, I'm not going to be a Democrat anymore. I've got to leave. And it was based last week. It was based simply last week. And you and I were a little surprised going, that's what made you turn the corner and go, okay, maybe it was everything, and that was the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah.
But it was AOC and the other Democrats arguing with the Republicans on the bill to make it where men can't compete with women in sports. And this guy had enough when he was like, you're screaming at them as if they're basically perverted pedophiles who wish to examine the private parts of young people because it's nowhere in the bill, and they've made it clear, well, no, birth certificate would be great, and you're out there screaming, you're just doing this because you're a bunch of pedophiles, and by passing this law that won't allow men to play women, you'll be able to bring them into a private room and examine their genitals. And we burst out laughing at that, going, really, that's your argument? Well, that got this professor, lifelong Democrat, gay activist, to say, I've had enough. Yeah. I'm out of here. I'm not going to be a part of the Democratic Party anymore. I did see, and it was right around inauguration. And it was a group of gay people out there with signs saying, we're gay. We're not stupid.
Right.
And they were supporting Trump. And
right.
It's just like, wow. And so, but you look at it and you everything, there's no way, and you and I have said this for the longest time, there's no way you can look at the Democrats over the last 4 years and not look at it and going, why are they trying to destroy things? Why aren't they building things? Why are they destroying things? Why don't they care about Americans? Why are they screaming that people should be able to cross the border? It doesn't make sense. And Trump has a completely and totally reasonable position, which is, I want, and by the way, I hope he keeps up on it, because as we've known, liberals can't tell the truth. For years, they muddied the water, which is why they said, you're against immigration. Trump's like, I'm not against immigration. I'm against illegal immigration. We have a legal immigration process. We should follow it.
Right.
And if the demand is there, when it comes to we need people for a workforce, which he believes it will, that's what Trump believes. America doesn't believe that yet, but Trump believes that. I believe Trump is, I don't know when we're really going to feel the impact of a lack of the ample labor force we're going to need. But this is simply looking at history. And when you look at history and you see women coming into the workforce and you see the baby boom from post-World War II and the tens of millions of people that were needed, there will eventually come to a point where you're going to need that. Now, I said that last week. First piece of hate mail I've gotten in a long time. Now, the guy didn't explain himself, but he was like furious. I'm just telling you, we're looking at economics. I'm looking at history. Your opinion, it's not my opinion. It's my observation of there are some things that you observe. Gravity isn't an opinion.
Right.
Economics is not an opinion.
Right.
Because what you'll see is economics doesn't change because government tries to manipulate an economy, because people act in their own self-interest. That's what I believe you're seeing in politics right now. I think people have finally, as we've said, we went from the abstract and the hypothetical in politics. Well, if we do this and we invest here, which means if we tax you more and government decides where to put your money, it's going to work out for you. And the people have realized, because of COVID, because of the inflation caused from all the programs and the fact that Biden was warned, don't do this. This kind of spending is going to cause inflation. Post-pandemic, it did. And the public realizes that. And it's in their own best self-interest. But if you're worried about your own self-interest, if you're worried about where you're going to go, a lot of these people are the people looking and going, I may not agree with Trump on anything, but he really does care about us. You and I talked about this in 2015. It was the fall of 2015. And I said, Eric, what I'm getting out of people supporting Trump is they sit there and they say, he loves Americans, which means he loves me. He cares about me first. Yeah. Now, the Democrats have put that out as something that's negative. If you care about Americans first, you're a Christian nationalist.
Right. How dare you?
Yes.
Boo, America.
Boo. What? You care about Americans first? Well, common sense people. Oh, well, no, that's actually a good thing.
Well,
it went so crazy that people are now saying, no, he's right. And I really believe you and I pay attention to the minutia because we're always on social media. We want to know what's going on. It's fascinating, even when I went on Christmas vacation. And I didn't look at it that much, and you can hear just normal people, and all of that white noise is gone. You realize that over the last couple of days, even all this white noise about Hitler, whatever, people don't care about that at all.
People don't care about it.
I give a damn about that.
AOC just looks like another crying baby laying down and throwing a fit in the middle of the aisle at the grocery store. You know, people just walk around and go, well, somebody's kids. You know?
You're right.
And, you know, it was... the more I think about it, the more I reflect on it, the more I think that his speech the other day was necessary, but it was brilliant in the way that, because we talked about, you know, we're going to get back to being pro-American, blah, 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 and then he gets a standing ovation. Well, Biden and Kamala Harris couldn't stand. They weren't going to stand. Mostly everybody else in that room was standing, and they were sitting down. Now, they couldn't. They were damned if they did, damned if they didn't. They couldn't applaud all of those things that, of course, they helped to break, and they were against. But seeing it, the visual of them sitting there with their hands in their laps, not responding that, because I was thinking to myself, you know, I'm waiting for one of them to go, boo, pro-America, boo, boo, secure border, boo. I mean, it was, you know, because I was thinking that, please do that, because that was the imagery. And it was necessary for President Trump to say, this is what they did, and this is what I have to fix. This is what we're going to do. But just the imagery of them sitting down while everybody else in that room mostly was standing up and applauding. It was telling. It wasn't just the fact that they can't really stand up and applaud, because that would be saying, yep, we were wrong on everything. But it was telling in the contrast that was created by that speech and the response to that speech. And I just... it's just, there's so much in those moments that reflect where we are as a nation. And you have people again like Tim Cook. If I bet $1 on that, I'm betting that dollar that he did not vote for Donald Trump, but he knows, because he talked about it. Remember the NBC interview that he did during the first Trump term with Lester Holt? Look, we want the government to be, you know, more pro-business so we can bring our dollars back from the money that we make abroad back to the U.S. and reinvest it here. We want that. That was Tim Cook talking about.
Was that during Trump or was that Obama?
No, that was during Trump.
Okay.
And because the GOP was trying to move on that.
I remember, was it Steve Jobs then?
Steve Jobs was at
with Obama?
Yeah, this big, it was back, in fact, it was back in California. You know, the Silicon Valley, you know, basically all the tech heads are sitting at this big table. And Steve Jobs, and I think he wrote about this in his book before he passed, and which, of course, he couldn't do after he passed. Of course, it was before he passed, was talking about how he's sitting next to Obama, trying to explain that to Obama. We want to bring money back here and invest it here. We want to do more here. But your party won't let us. And Obama wouldn't listen to him.
Yeah, that was it. That's what I remember.
And that's why, you know, his successor has talked about this openly and did during Trump's first term.
866-90 Red Eye.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Rhode Island Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Yep, we certainly do live in fascinating times, and that's why I know where the Republicans are going. All right, we know where Trump's going, we know where Republicans are going, which makes it just that much more interesting. Where's the Democratic Party going? Which is basically how we started the show today, because and we played it with it was a bunch of Obama aides and Democrat operatives on with Joe Scarborough, and they can't explain. They cannot explain even to themselves. I believe they know, and they know what the problem is because people like Roy Teixeira, Douglas Schoen, they were clear before Trump won.
Yeah.
They were clear last spring when they were saying, nah, you suck on the issues.
Yeah, right.
This isn't that you're not communicating effectively. It's not that you need another Joe Rogan, because you had Joe Rogan. It's the fact that people look at where you stand on the issues and say, you're insane.
Yeah.
There's no common sense to this. And as we have added to it, people have realized that the Democratic Party and liberalism seeks to hurt people.
Yeah.
Seeks to hurt Americans.
Right.
They don't care about Americans. And you know, the interesting thing is when Trump first became president and was throwing out America first, remember that's where the whole Christian nationalism came in. And this is like the Nazis. You notice nobody says that anymore?
No.
You don't hear that at all. You don't even hear that. You don't see that even on social media.
No. No, you don't.
Because you can't sell that. So you're saying Donald Trump's big problem was he cares about Americans first.
Yeah.
Well, that's like saying my union leader cares about his union members first.
Right. Well, what did they find? The Wall Street Journal, walking through Harlem, going through Harlem and talking to people the day after, it was a day or two after the election in 2016. Why do you think he won and Hillary lost? Because he was identifying things here at home, here in the States. She was talking about things elsewhere. That was the common thread in those answers. And they were right. They weren't buying it. People weren't buying that.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Thank you for being here this morning. I really think that, you know, what we're seeing over the last couple of years, what we saw in this election, I mean, all of this is going to go down in the history books, and it's going to be fascinating to see where this Republican Party goes. I haven't seen this since I've been covering politics. I haven't seen such a momentum and a pretty organized, a very organized momentum for everything that they wish to do and everything that this administration wishes to reverse. Now, they're not going to be successful on everything. A lot of stuff's going to be caught up in court cases.
But they're working.
They
went to work right away.
And to show you what I call the Trump influence is, here it is right here. John Thune, Senate Republicans to hold Senate open nights, weekends, recess, whatever it takes to confirm Trump nominees. You try to hold us back. You know, the Democrats trying to stall.
Yeah.
You know, some of the nominees.
Yeah.
Fine. We're gonna stay open.
Yep.
We're gonna be open weekends. We're going to get the job done. This isn't standard operating procedure anymore. There's things that we all wish to accomplish, and it's just, I just sit back and go, wow. And I sit back and look at Trump, and you know the criticisms that we had of him in 2017, 2018.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I'm telling you, he is. And I say this, I've said this before, and people, because you use the P word, people think that you're insulting someone. He has become one hell of a politician. And I mean that as the highest compliment.
We talked about his unique abilities back then. And if you put those unique abilities in negotiating together and understanding, you got to build a consensus. You don't have to be a fan or in lockstep with everybody in your party, but you're going to need your party. And you're going to have to build a consensus, not just as president on Capitol Hill. You're going to have to build or with Capitol Hill, you're going to have to build that consensus in order to win. And he did it. And that takes, you really have to get out there and you have to campaign in a very targeted way. He talked about Bill Clinton the other day. I think he was throwing Bill Clinton under the bus.
You got to mention it. You got to mention it.
So it was asked, about, all the people there, and something came up about Bill Clinton. He goes, Bill Clinton is a very good politician. He said,
he asked who was a good president or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Because they were of all. I think that it was, I think it was in the same line of questioning when he was asked about any advice from any of the living presidents. Well, we can set Biden aside because none of that advice would actually be taken in. But beyond that, it was, they talked about the former presidents, and he brought up Bill Clinton. He said, Bill Clinton's a very good politician. He said, back in 2016, he actually came to me and said, hey, you need to get to Michigan and Wisconsin because I'm seeing yard signs in Michigan and Wisconsin. And, of course, I don't have to remind you, I don't think that his wife, Bill Clinton's wife, was the opponent. And he's so Trump's talking the other day. Yeah, he told me, I need to go campaign in Wisconsin and Michigan, and it turns out I did, and I won both of those states, and I won them again in 24. And
you gotta, I'm telling you, you got to beat the hell out of her because I'm not going to be the first man.
I'm not
going to be the first man.
I am not going to the White House with that woman. It's so.
I mean, when I heard that the other day, I burst out laughing.
Just beautiful. Because,
I'm like, he just threw her under the bus.
Yeah,
not threw her under the bus. He just insulted her by saying, I gave your opponent good advice that he followed.
Exactly. And Trump was very quick to throw Bill under the bus for doing it.
Yeah, Bill got thrown under the bus.
You know, and that's, it really is kind of the, I think the approach, we talked about it, there's no doubt that the sensibilities of Trump have changed in how you get things done inside the Beltway. But a lot of that comes from everything thrown at him. I've said often, I'll repeat it here, he hasn't flinched with everything thrown at him, including 2 attempts on his life in recent months. All of these things are major game changers, but I believe there's a number of Americans who look at that attempted assassination, the one in Pennsylvania, and I think the scenario in their minds was, whoa, I may never vote for this guy, but this over-the-top craziness thrown at him has to stop. And it wasn't long after that we started seeing people like Michael Rappaport and other people on the left. In the days after that, everybody was, it was a very sobering experience for everyone. But remember, it didn't take long because on the convention stage, he still had a bandage over his ear. And the liberals were, he's just wearing a bandage over his ear for show. The guy was, a quarter of an inch from not being here anymore. And that's what they came up with. I really think it boiled over because the left made it so hot that it was always going to get to a point of, you guys are crazy. You know, it's one thing if the children lay down in the grocery store aisle and they're crying, AOC, but when they get up and start breaking things, Joe Biden, the border, inflation, national security, crime, the liberal transgender movement, and everything else, when that child gets up and starts doing real destruction, real damage, adults need to come into the room and take charge.
Well, and that's what you've seen. I mean, he's come in, he's taken charge, he has let the American public know. And, man, I mean, it has something that we've been talking about for the longest time. I forgot when I started saying it, that it's never been easier to defend, conservative and common sense issues. And I probably started it 15, 20 years ago. And, I mean, it's truer every day. Mm-hmm. And he's just taking the bull by the horns. The other thing is he has Trump. Look, anybody who runs for president, you probably have an ego. You might, if you call it a little bit of narcissism, that's probably greater than the average person. And you get into it, and I'm being inclusive for anybody who runs, who becomes president of the United States. Once you get elected, you may buy the hype that, as my father always said, you got a title and you believe you got an infusion of brains.
Yeah. I'd be sleeping in the Oval Office.
but when you see Trump was willing to learn. Mm-hmm. He learned from his mistakes, and he's even gone beyond that. The way he has brought people together, the way, and maybe part of it is the assassination attempt. I don't know. Nobody can get into his mind. Mm-hmm. But you see, for example, could you imagine a year ago him golfing with DeSantis? I think he came to the realization that this isn't about it's not about a competition with everyone. You need to be united. You need, and I think probably, I'm going to guess because I think it's basically human nature. I think that he feels humbled because he realizes that the people of the United States might have saved him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because of the election, that they came around and they saw what was happening to him. And remember his face when he was first in those courtrooms. Mm-hmm. Like, they're all coming after me. Mm-hmm. How am I ever going to get out of this? Mm-hmm. And how he really he was eventually going to get out of it, and the courts would eventually do it. But I guarantee he probably felt alone.
Yeah.
And now he doesn't feel alone. He realizes, because the people of the United States actually last year was the biggest jury. There's no way Trump is president
if he's truly guilty of harsh crimes.
If the people of the United States thought he was guilty, he would have never received 77 million votes. They looked at it and said, this guy's being set up, and this is unfair. Mm-hmm. It stinks. And by the way, the other side, you suck on all the issues that you're promoting too. Mm-hmm. Stop trying to hurt the America. And you cannot discount that. And that's what makes it. Look, it's as close to a political miracle as you could possibly get. The fact that Trump is president.
And won in such a way. I mean, with demographics crossing over and everything else.
Yeah.
It is the political comeback
of all time.
There is none greater politically. There just isn't.
And so,
because far too often it's, all right, remember during the confirmation hearings, the SCOTUS confirmation hearings, and the Lindsey Graham thing. It's like, oh, look, somebody woke Lindsey Graham up again. It's like, okay, Lindsey, good. Well, inevitably that was not going to last. Inevitably it was like, okay. But and I wondered about this during Trump's first term. All right. Trump, no doubt, is a fighter. Where are the rest of the fighters in the GOP? Well, we found them.
Yeah.
They were all on stage at the convention.
Yeah.
And now a number of them are going to be cabinet members, but they're all surrogates for this administration. And when you look at the actions of Thune, you look at the speaker. Look, I know there's been a great deal of concerns about Johnson, and there will be along the way. That's just going to happen. But the one thing is, and this is what we said during the transition, what is it that Trump wants to get done? You guys, he's the one that leads here. Everybody else, work it out, but be on board eventually.
Well, I think that's one of the greatest points, is that probably a significant portion, maybe a majority of Trump supporters wanted Johnson gone.
Yep.
And Trump, a leader is when you say, I'm not going to follow, I'm going to lead.
Right.
You follow me.
Right. What does he want? What is he going to do?
Right.
What does he think needs to be done here?
And he's done it on a few things where you've heard grumbling, but he's like, no, I'm going to be a leader here, and that's what you have to do. Eventually, you have to say, okay, I just can't do what the base tells me.
Right.
I've got to be a leader here and say, I need to pass legislation. I have to look long term, not short term.
Right.
I need to not win every single. We had this debate with Trump supporters back in 2016. We said, stop trying to win every battle, win the war. No, you got to win every battle. You got to win every battle. Well, Trump realizes you don't have to win every battle. You got to win the war long term.
Right.
And that's what a successful politician does. And it looks like he's building a coalition that hopefully can get a significant portion of what he wants through Congress on a sliver majority in the House.
He didn't have that coming in 2017, for sure.
No. 866-90 Red Eye.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. You know what got to me the other day when I was watching the inauguration, how they were introducing, especially they were introducing all the Democrats, and everybody was the honorable. I was like, okay,
right. Yeah.
The honorable, the honorable, the honorable, the honorable, the honorable. And I'm just like, all these people that should never be anywhere as a part of their label.
Yeah, exactly.
Are being called honorable. Like, okay, I mean, I get it, I understand it. You respect our system of government, and I understand that.
Yeah,
you respect the presidency.
Oh, right.
You respect the speakership and all the political leaders. But I did get maybe a tiny bit of nausea after about the 10th year, the honorable.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
It's going to be fun over the next 4 years. Yes, serious, but you got to have fun. And believe me, we're going to have fun.
Yeah.
More audio. You ready?
What do you got?
Jamie Dimon.
Oh.
On CNBC yesterday.
Okay.
JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon. All right. I'm just going to play it.
Yeah.
Here we go.
All right.
I mean, you got to look at Elon. I mean, SpaceX, I mean, Tesla, Neuralink. The guy is our Einstein. And so I like to be helpful to him and his company as much as we can. I think it is completely rational for someone to look at our government and say it's been ineffective. We deserve good government. And I don't think anyone thinks sending another $1 trillion to Washington, D.C. will lend to good government. So government needs to be more accountable. It needs to be more efficient. It should be outcomes-based. I mean, I say department by department, so I wish them the best. It's going to be complicated. As you know, the federal government's complicated. You read about all the people in it. And so, if we could be helpful to them, and I'd love to be helpful to them.
It's just great.
It really is like
where am I?
I didn't expect this kind of consensus building. I mean, I expected some. Look, I would have been good with most in the GOP being on board. But it's like all these corporation CEOs going, yeah, make America great again. Let's do this. I mean, it was, they're not full on in that mode, but for them, the swing from where they were in the past, Trump coming in 2017, in fact, had to work really hard. It was basically from the GOP. It was mostly him and Jeff Sessions. That was pretty much it. They had to, it was so much work that his own party, we talked about it in the first 2 years, the GOP should have put something together on funding the wall. $25 billion. Wow, $25 billion based on the inflation since then. It's like, man, that was a bargain. But we talked about it, but there was not going to be any of that. And, with Mueller being put to work in the first, by that first few months in office on the whole Russian hoax thing, then I think you had too many in the GOP that were never going to be converted fully. They were never going to be on board fully. You flash forward, it really is light years to 2024 in terms of the change, the swing, the shift. But even since the election,
yeah, I know. Yeah.
It is really now, I think they know it's okay. People I think Jamie Dimon has said things similar to this in the past. He's not, he hasn't been full on left. There's been lots of talk, remember, about him being Fed chair or maybe Treasury Secretary and things like that in the past. But when you take a look at it, what he said there was, I think, just kind of a Captain Obvious moment, but it's not just what he said. It's who said it. It's the fact that he said it. And you couple that with companies moving away from DEI. They're abandoning that. You know what? We're going to go back to doing what we do. We're going to treat everybody fair. And we're in business to make a profit. And that means jobs for lots of people. That means a growing economy where it really should be. But there is that, you and I talked about it earlier, but for those just joining us, the sense that the intimidation that the mob has put, the radical mob on the left had put in place for far too long, with the rank and file, with corporations and everything else. Silence is violence. We'll come after you. We'll ruin your business. We'll ruin your life if you don't do what we say, if you don't get out there and champion our cause and fight the way we think you should fight for us, for our benefit. Well, that seemingly is all but gone. And it really, I mean, the last few days especially, there are so many indicators that this really is a new era. And you and I aren't quick to jump into the hyperbole created over any kind of euphoria, because I don't consider what I'm observing here to be euphoria on my part. I'm personally impressed by what's going on and hopeful, but also realize there's a great deal of work yet to be done in order to fix what needs to be fixed. And where we are right now, what we're seeing is very encouraging, because this really is right now it's a group of corporations, large corporate, the biggest of the biggest. Chase, in terms of banking, is the big dog. You look at Amazon, you look at, again, Apple, with Tim Cook being up there the other day. And I'm convinced Tim Cook, it would be hard to convince me that he voted for Donald Trump. But yet he's up there and he understands what the policy needs to be, and something that only the GOP has been willing to listen to in terms of being able to reinvest back in the United States. The liberals had shut that down. We want to punish these companies. We want to take their profits. And no, you can't bring them back here and reinvest. Why in the hell would we have that policy as a nation when we want those companies to come back? By the way, Coca-Cola is one of them. These are massive global brand names that have consumers and users all over the world. I mean, iPhone is it. Apple is a monster of a company. But you've got to have the right business climate to invest more in the United States. We've talked about this when it comes to energy, manufacturing, and everything else. We've got to reset the table completely, and companies have to know this is a long-term reset. We're going to play this the way it should be played. We're going to set up everything that they need, cheap energy. And the big hurdle right now would be finding the number of humans to fill those roles once they invest here. But those things, all of those things can be part of a discussion going forward. You set the tone that we're going to be pro-business, and I believe things will start to fall in place.
Let me ask this question here, because I played Jamie Dimon, because it's just like you're shaking our head because you're seeing, just what we observe. For example, the inauguration and all these, CEOs behind, and the CEOs now promoting, no censorship and freedom. And we know all the hell that we went through. But is there really a shift, a cultural shift? Because you're going to hear, well, the cultural shift, if you look at right here in the polling shows now almost 80% of Americans do not believe that men should be playing women's sports. I think they always believe that way. Yeah. I don't think that any of the CEOs have really changed their mind. They may have changed their mind because of business, but I don't think they've actually changed their mind. I think they were intimidated by the last administration.
Yeah, to be clear, I think the same thing.
Right,
yeah,
I think they've and the interesting thing is it's Donald Trump who they call the fascist. It's Donald Trump who they call Hitler, as if we're going to be running an authoritarian government. And I see it as just the opposite. I see that at times it does take people, as well as I do. We've talked about it earlier in the show. I have never seen the intimidation coming from government, which then flowed down to business, than I saw in 2020, 2021, and 2022 and 2023. Mm-hmm. It started loosening up in 2024 as we got into the campaign and everything else. But the aura of intimidation, part of it was COVID. You better, we're watching, report if your neighbors do anything. Remember the insanity of police officers going to houses if they had more than a couple of cars in front of their homes?
Oh, yeah.
Do we understand how far insane and authoritarian and fascist we almost went? And it wasn't because of Trump. Mm-hmm. And now Trump comes in. And Trump isn't acting as an authoritarian. Trump's coming in and saying, we need to have less government. He just put out there's the executive order, all departments, censorship goes.
Yep.
An authoritarian doesn't do that.
Right.
And so you see it. The censorship, it's got to go. You need to be promoting free speech, free speech, free speech. Community notes, there's nothing better than the American public getting their say as to what's the truth instead of the arrogant narcissist radio talk show host who dictate to everybody. Oh, wait a minute. I mean, those podcasters and newspapers and everything else, those arrogant narcissists, but, believing that they can set the entire table. And the one thing that you and I both noticed is when Elon Musk started coming out and saying, we're the media.
Yeah.
And the leftist media went crazy. And the people in the right media, we just went, well, I never thought I was going to have an exclusive monopoly in the arena of ideas.
Right.
I'm happy that commercially we've had the success, and I've had the success that I've had, and people have been willing to hire me the last 42 years to do this. And I appreciate, people saying it. I never thought I'd be exclusive, or I never thought that only my opinion and those that held my opinion should do it. You and I have always been as close to absolute free speech people as we can be because we understand what the First Amendment is about.
And we're tired of carrying all the weight, frankly.
We're getting tired and old.
We don't want to be the only ones.
No, but
it really is the Captain Phillips moment if you think about it when Elon Musk said that. Yeah. You are the media, because I think people look at that and there is that moment. I'm the media now. I'm the cat. I'm the media now.
God bless them. It's we live in the damn. It should be. We live in the damn United States of America. It's supposed to be that way.
Yes, you can find the truth. That's the great thing about it. It was years ago, and I would love to see the update on this, but based on technology, what it would take you 100 years ago to find the amount of information that you can find in 1 hour, based on at that time computers. Now it's smartphones. Well, forget it. With smartphones, that's got to be ramped up in 1 minute. It would take you 100 years to what you can find in a minute. It would take you 100 years to find, because you had to go, you actually had to travel to actually go do that. Kids, there were things called libraries. We'll talk about those later. But those are the things that you look at in terms of, the empowerment of the American people. I think now these corporations feel empowered to do what they do. I feel they feel like now they don't have to ask permission. They just need to do what they do. And that's the way it should be in a free market society. That's exactly the way it should be.
I remember when Elon Musk said that, and all of a sudden the leftist media started going crazy. Mm-hmm. We're the professionals. Mm-hmm. We're the ones.
Yeah. Right.
We're the ones that know. We've done the research. And I remember, I don't know if I said it to you off the air or on the air. And I said, Eric, do you have any feeling of being threatened at all? Because Elon Musk has said, we are the media, which means the people can get involved in social media. The people can get involved in YouTube. They can create their own podcast. They can become, bigger superstars than we are if they hit the right niche. Does that bother you at all? And you're like, well, no. I go, no. Neither do I. And then we went back and we thought, we had this discussion about Bernard Goldberg and his book Bias. Mm-hmm. When he wrote, he goes, no, you've got to understand it. You have to understand if you work in the Beltway, and we've never worked really in the Beltway.
No.
We've always been in the fringe radical states.
Yeah.
But it's like, you have to understand, they think there's the right, the left, and then there's them, and they're the right. They're the right. They're the elite professionals. They know what's going on. That mindset actually exists there. It doesn't exist anywhere where I've been in the media, but I haven't been in the Beltway. I haven't been in the New York, Washington Beltway, and, gone to the cocktail parties or Eric, are we invited? Eric, are you, me, and Mr. and Mrs. Howell, are we invited to the White House next week?
Well, no.
We could care less about that crap. We're just, we're just regular We're actually blue-collar people that some fool said, oh, I'll trust my radio station to you guys talking.
Exactly.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. I'm still impressed to this day.
Right.
People ask me all the time, oh, so your management must be horrible. We got the greatest management in the world. Why? Because I came to an agreement with them, and they said, say whatever you want on the radio.
Right.
And a part of me went, are you the biggest idiots ever known to mankind? Why would you ever allow me to determine whether your business succeeds or not? So there's always been a sense of awe and appreciation. It's a last thing of arrogance and elitism. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so when they said, okay, it's going to open up where anybody could possibly be a superstar, somebody who can be a nobody can have a podcast. They can get hundreds of thousands of people paying attention to them.
Right.
You and I are like, well, yeah, we live in the United States of America. We don't live in Canada.
Exactly.
You know, free speech we cherish here. 866-90-RED-I.
Brought to you by Hot Shot Secret.
Hi, I'm Jen Loomis, a transport safety expert at J.J. Keller, and I'm here to share a tip on speed and space management. Due to safety concerns, many motor carriers have policies that limit or prohibit the use of cruise control. If your motor carrier does allow you to use cruise control, you should only use it in good driving conditions during daylight hours and on roads that have light traffic, few curves or hills, and a consistent speed limit. Never use cruise control when operating in adverse driving conditions, including wet, icy, or slippery roads, during rush hour in heavy traffic or on congested highways, at night, or when you're tired or fatigued. During all of these driving scenarios, you want to be controlling and adjusting your speed as you drive instead of having to suddenly brake if you encounter an obstacle. In the case of a slippery road surface, you want to be able to slow your vehicle by not accelerating instead of using the brakes whenever possible. This tip was brought to you by J.J. Keller and Associates. Visit us at jjkeller.com.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-I on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Carly, and I'm Gary McNamara. What did you went back and did a little bit of research on the whole We Are the Media thing?
Yeah, because it was Jim Vandehey who went crazy on the whole Elon Musk claiming, okay, you are the media now. And, you know, he said it's, BS. He used the words. You are not the media. He was screaming. And so he's the CEO of Axios. This was at the end of November. And it wasn't long before that, October, in fact, the previous month. Here's the headline from Axios. TikTok podcasts Substack. How Harris, Trump, and CEOs adapt to new media. And here's the first line. Newsrooms are shrinking and audiences are becoming more dispersed as independent journalists successfully launch Substacks. Content creators pivot into podcasting, and TikTokers report on the news from his news organization.
Fascist!
Wow. That's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
And he is Eric Carly, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. This is really interesting. You saw that Sean Hannity did a interview with Trump.
Mm-hmm.
And the funny thing is, when I saw the still of the video,
yeah,
I didn't recognize Sean Hannity.
Oh, really?
And I went, I hope Trump's not doing it. He's doing an interview with some mainstream media person now. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's Sean.
Yeah, right.
I haven't seen him in person in 15 years. Because we used to see him a lot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they did the interview in the Oval Office.
And I just like, I'm not getting old, am I? Because he looks old, a lot older than when I last saw him. But all right, that's not the point. The point was this from Trump, because I found this. I found this perfect because it sounded just like you. Okay. Here we go.
It's turning out to be bigger, and I think one thing is happening is people are learning that they can't govern and that their policies are terrible. I mean, they don't want to see a woman get pummeled by a man in a boxing ring. No. They don't want to see men in women's sports and otherwise. They don't want to see them, and they don't want to have transgender for everyone. They don't want a child leave home as a boy and come back 2 days later as a girl. A parent doesn't want to see that. And there are states where that can happen. Oh. They don't want to see taxes go through the roof. Like, this is the only group of people they want to raise your they say we want to raise your taxes. You know, if they don't work with us on the Trump tax cuts extending, that would mean it would go back to the taxes. We got the largest tax cut in history. That would mean the taxes would go up more than any tax hike in the history of our country. And normally you'd say that's got to be the easiest negotiation in history, because if they did that, how could they ever win an election? But they'll fight us on that. They fight us on things. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Right now, on January 23rd, 2025, how do you argue with any of that?
You can't. There's zero fat in what he just said.
How do you argue with that?
It's, one of the things that you look at, that you and I observed from the very first moments during his inauguration speech, the contrast laid out. Because what you have to do is there has to be those reminders. You have to bring people along in this battle, in this work that's ahead of you. You're going to have to bring them along and say, okay, see what we're doing. See, this is what they did. And it's like, if you were giving a tour of a big project, right? Okay, this is what was here before. That wasn't working. So now we're building this. And you have to do that over and over again, because in this case, the investors of that big project are the American people. You're taking them, put your hard hats on. Let's go through this over and over again. And he just walked through it again. Look at what one of the things we're trying to do, extend the tax cuts. And if the Democrats, they should be on board, but they're not. And the thing is, too, I'll add to that, is what we have been talking about this week, and we've talked about it before. The Democrats want to punish. They're looking to punish, 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 punish. And what they do is they'll tell you, well, Trump's just trying to cut taxes for his billionaire buddies. This will, if you look at the tax cuts, and if they're not extended, it's going to affect a great deal of American families. And the problem with that is post-inflation, you inflict more pain by raising their taxes now, by not extending these cuts. Again, you're putting them deeper underwater where they have been since inflation hit. And you've got to point that out. This is what he points out again and again. This is what we're battling. This is what we're working against. And that's what's vastly different from when he came in about this time in January of 2017. I mean, really, from the get-go, January 2017, he was fighting the whole Russian collusion thing and the liberal activist media, but also the fact that his own party, there was not much of a consensus there. There wasn't a big enough consensus. He's got the mandate now. That's what's different. And the American people are with him, but you still have to guide everybody through and say, okay, this is what we're doing and why we're doing it. And this is what the other side is trying to do or not do.
Well, he's doing what we've always said. You need to take those 4 or 5 or 6 issues, which he's done, and you need to pound them. When you do this for a living, when when you do it every single day, whether it's for a living or not, when you do it 5 hours a day, 5 days a week, and you look at, for example, the Democrats and the 4, 5, 6, 7 issues, the huge issues that Americans are concerned about. The Democrats would keep using the same lies.
Yeah.
And the only response you could give every day would be the exact same answer back.
Right.
And you and I have said, in your mind, you say to yourself, well, you know, there's 500 issues that I could articulate on. And, man, it seems like I'm being repetitive in my own mind because it's the same damn answer every single day, every single hour. It's like, is anybody getting sick of it? And it's like, well, no, they're not, because you're responding to their same old argument, and the only way you can win it is the argument that wins it slam dunk.
Right.
So you have to repeat over and over again. And I think Trump did that very effectively in this campaign, and he has done it even more effectively since the election is over.
Right. Yeah, it's and going in, you know, these, because part of the really the overall goal here in sitting down with Sean was setting your first 100 days, right? But I think if you, and maybe he said this during the interview, I didn't watch every part of the interview, but I could hear Trump saying 100 days. No, I'm going to set the next 4 years. And we're going to be working through all 4 years. I mean, yeah, there's things we're doing already, by the way. First 100 days, he was getting it done in the first 100 hours. I mean, that's where those campaign promises really have to mean something in that. But it's not, you know, here's the thing. They're not, this is about resetting everything and making people's lives better by saying we're not going to do all of these things that, you know, create such inefficiencies, whether it's in the government or in the private sector. We're gonna do away with regulations. We're going to do all of these things and get, you know, kind of stay out of the way so things can happen the way they're supposed to. And when you talk taxes, this is something you're going to, again, most people probably don't know on the tax cuts. All right, what were they about, and what happened during that, and when do they expire, and what does it mean if they? Well, you got to walk them through that. You've got to keep them reminded of what was just done for 4 years and what you have to do to fix it.
Another example, because I thought this was very, very effective in the confirmation hearing for Office of Management and Budget nominee Russ Vought, and it was Senator Bernie Moreno, Republican. And now listen to the line of questioning, how he does it. And this just goes back to something that you and I have been saying since we've been talk show hosts. Anything in life, even business, the biggest failure, in my opinion, in business is a lack of communication between management and the worker.
Yeah.
I've always viewed that as the biggest problem. There is a lack of, you know, communication to set the culture of what you want in a company. And I've always said it's horrible in the United States, but it's better here than the rest of the world. So how the hell is the rest of the world even surviving? Because we just but communicating a message effectively is even more important in politics. Tell me whether this communicates. This is a line of questioning now to the nominee Russ Vought from the Republican senator. Tell me whether this is effective.
When you house illegals in this country, people who are not invited here like I was, like my family was, when you house them in luxury hotels at a cost of $6,000 per month per room, does that help working class Americans?
No.
When you give health care to those very illegals, when Americans don't have the health care that they need, does that help working class Americans?
No.
When you provide food to illegals, and in some cases, when they don't like the food, you give them $1,000 prepaid credit cards, does that help working class American citizens?
No, sir.
When you give sex change operations to illegals, does that help working class Americans?
No.
When you offer DEI courses, and instead of being promoted based on merit, and rather you have this insane move to DEI, does that help working class Americans?
No.
And when you fly immigrants from foreign countries to the United States on private jets, does that help working class Americans?
No.
5, 6 things.
Yep.
Boom, 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 boom.
Yep. But we've been asking for years, for those that vote blue, what is the Democratic Party, what are the Democrats promising to do for you? What are they saying they're going to do for you to improve your life? They're not even going down the road of freebies anymore. They're in punishment mode constantly. We're going to go after, we're going to go after, we're going to go after, we're going to go after. You know, Trump is weeding out the rot. There's no doubt. But that has to be done based on their behavior. But that's not punishing Americans. That's going in and looking to reset the justice system. And again, make situations better for Americans. The liberals have nothing. They're not promising anything to improve your life. Nothing.
Well, you think about it. The only thing you've gotten this week is Hitler.
Yeah.
What else sticks out?
Right. Yeah. Right.
And by the way, it's not effective, but because I know Americans are rolling their eyes because it already failed.
Right.
It was a failed failed political marketing.
Right.
It did not work. In fact, you probably lost votes by continuing to say Hitler when the public looked and said, we know who Hitler is.
Yeah.
This guy isn't Hitler. And they don't learn. And then, as you and I mentioned before, and I know maybe we're reading more into this, maybe the public isn't up on this as quick as we are because we have instant reaction the moment we hear it. But the whole thing, even though it is a couple of months old, we are the media.
Mm-hmm.
You think anybody in the public is offended by that? We
No.
weren't offended. Conservative media wasn't
We've
offended.
been saying it.
They're the ones that furious. You're like, why are they furious that the American public gets to speak?
We've been saying it for a long time. You have the ability to find the facts. You just have to have the will. And if you do, you can find it yourself. And that's a great thing. AOC on the floor on the Laken Riley Act yesterday. Quote, if an illegal alien is so much as accused of a crime, they will be rounded up and put into a private detention camp and sent out for deportation. Yeah, AOC. That's the whole point.
Was that in quotes? Because I'm sure she didn't say illegal alien.
No, I don't think she said illegal alien. Because I was questioning that too. But that's the legal term.
Right.
And,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
And
no.
But she's pointing out.
She's just following the new protocol.
Exactly.
She's following the new protocol.
But it's it's like, well, thank you for stating the obvious. Yeah. That's the whole point of the Laken Riley Act.
866-90 Red Eye.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90 Red Eye.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley. I'm Gary McNamara. Download our Red Eye Radio app today. After our show is over, which is at 5 a.m. Central, 6 p.m. Eastern.
6 a.m. Eastern.
What'd I say?
P.m.
P.m. A.m. Thank you very much.
I'm not staying that late.
You can if you didn't catch the entire show, or you just work overnight anymore, you can catch our podcast.
That's right.
We repeat the show. And if during the show you can't get us on one of our great radio stations, you can get all 5 hours on our Red Eye Radio app.
That's right.
Coming up next, you're going to want to hear this. Out of Canada,
Yeah.
are they becoming the United States like under Trump? Wait till you hear this audio.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.